So, hello once again, everyone, and welcome to another episode at the Cuspa Freedom. I'm your host, Marvin Teo, and on this episode, we'll be speaking on how my friend Hannah became, why and how she became who she is. I'll let her introduce herself real quick before we jump into it.
Yeah, so I'm Hannah, and I am an English teacher, and I'm a digital nomad living abroad now for about a year and a half, and I'm originally from the United States.
Oh wow, that sounds very interesting. Representing the United States here in Medellin.
That's right, represent.
So what do you do as a digital nomad?
I'm an English teacher.
Interesting. Why did you decide to become a teacher?
I think I originally decided to become an English teacher specifically because there's a lot of mobility with it. I can travel all over the world. It's really, really useful, and I mean, I love teaching. I'm very passionate about it. So.
Did you have a passion for writing and reading when you were young, or were you one of those kids that were I'm more into art and?
No, I love writing and reading. I actually went to my state competition for poetry as a child. So I enjoy writing, reading, but I think teaching adults is a little bit different because it's more focused on grammar and conversation based. But yeah.
But do you think that having that passion for writing and reading is a critical thing to have if deciding to choose English as something to pursue?
I think it makes it more enjoyable because you can actually enjoy what you're teaching. I don't think it's necessarily necessary, but I think, if, of course, you have passion about the topics that you're teaching, you're going to enjoy it more.
Interesting. So what was your path becoming an English professor? Did you go to college? Did you get certified? And what made you understand that you could work remotely as a teacher? I have a feeling that nowadays, when it comes to remote work, the first thing that comes to my mind, and that probably came to your mind when I said it, is software engineering. Mm-hmm. So what made you feel like you could do remote work with English?
I feel so to answer all your questions, I did go to university, but I did not study education. I studied criminal justice, justice and peace, and theology. But I, upon graduating, worked in a domestic violence shelter with children, and I specifically worked within preschool aged and kindergartners, and that is where the passion for teaching kind of developed. And then I transferred into a Montessori school, and I really enjoyed that. And I was I love traveling. It's something I really want to do. And this was kind of about a year and a half after COVID really hit in middle of 2021. And so that's when I went to get a TEFL certification. It stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language. And I got that in Costa Rica. And then because this was still in the time of COVID, most places were hiring teachers remotely. And so that's kind of what led me to that.
Interesting. So when you went into that educating people from kids from traumatic abusive homes, did you learn anything besides that teaching could help? What did you learn from those kids that went through such how did it feel, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really difficult, but luckily I worked for a fantastic organization that did trauma-informed care teaching to all of the workers. So you have to really know what you're doing because you're working with kids who have been through severely traumatic experiences, and so how to kind of navigate when they're having difficulties or outbreaks or things like this, how to approach that in a traumatic, informed way versus just somebody who's hey, you're being naughty, stop, and yelling at them because it doesn't help, it doesn't work. And so I think that spawned a lot of passion and empathy and compassion within my work. But it was, of course, really, really hard because you're working with children who have, from the moment they're born, almost had things against them and different obstacles that they've had to overcome. But I think it was so inspiring to see how they grew and developed when they were given and shown love. So it was great. I loved it.
Do you think teaching is a way of showing love?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Especially with children. I don't know so much about I teach adults now business English, so I don't know how much I'm expressing love with them, but with children, yes, for sure.
Interesting. So in general, you got into English because you felt like you had a passion for reading, writing, and after college, when you got your job working at that center, you realized that you have a passion for teaching these kids. And so I want to jump straight into it. Are you teaching kids or adults?
I teach adults now.
Okay, so you jumped from you want to help kids to I want to teach adults.
Yeah.
Okay, so was that transition based off of your want to travel as you work, and most of your clients had to be adults?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the company that I got hired with is based out of Chile, in Santiago specifically. And I think teaching remote, I personally prefer and exclusively only teach adults, because with children it's really difficult remote. Like, I want to be in person if I'm with kids, like being able to bring the energy and activities, whereas with adults remote it's significantly more easy, and they want to be there. Kids don't want to be sitting in front of a computer screen. It's not fun.
It's not the same like teaching you get when you're you're right. I can see that. And what are some challenges that you faced? I guess, is teaching adults like the perfect job, or does it also come with its own challenges? And
That's a good question.
And you said you got the TEFL exam for being a teacher, an English teacher.
Yeah.
Was that like like an international degree that you can get, or?
So the TEFL, it's a certification, and mine was 180 hours. It was over the span of a month, and it was really, really intense. And so I was in a classroom-based setting in person in Costa Rica with about 6 or 7 other people getting it. And it is international in the sense that if I wanted to apply to a job in China, I could say, I have my TEFL, and they know what you're talking about.
Interesting. So if you got a degree from the United States, say you went to university, and you majored in like, I don't know, what major can give you a teaching degree?
Education.
You majored in education. Wouldn't that be enough for you to be a teacher internationally as well? Or is the TEFL like the first thing people think about?
No, absolutely. If you have an education degree from the United States, schools are still going to hire you. But for me, for example, I didn't do education, and so that's what the TEFL and the teaching English to speakers of other languages exists for it, so that you can get that certification and be qualified to do it to the same caliber. Okay,
well, to this extent, if you could go back and do things differently, would you have gone to college, or would you have skipped college and just done the TEFL and moved on? I don't know.
No, absolutely. I mean, as an educator, I know that it's becoming quite popular, I think, for people to kind of be like skipping past university, and I think some people can do that depending on your job, but my experience was invaluable, and I would not trade it for the world. Like, I learned so many skills and like critical thinking and how to analyze and evaluate things, and it's like, I took philosophy classes, and am I thinking about philosophy every day? No, but it taught me to think critically and about logic and things like this, and so I think a lot of those skills carry over into your life, whereas if I just had a 1-month course, no. And also, it's limiting in your opportunities. I mean, when you have a bachelor's degree, there's more freedom and opportunity, versus just having a TEFL, you're really constricted to just getting jobs within that.
So when you were applying for those English positions, they looked at your degree as well?
My company did, yes.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess it's like, where to go to I guess like college is an investment towards like your education, and also towards like the little things you learn, like you said, critical thinking. Maybe you're good at networking and you meet people in college. But there tends to be a trend where like when people go to college, they go uneducated or uneducated financially, or they go without really knowing what they would do. So if you're a person and you have this passion for reading and writing, and you know you want to help people in the future, what would you do better if you're not financially educated, or if you don't know exactly what you want to do but you know what you're passionate about? Like, what would you do in order to go into college more prepared?
What do you mean by not being financially educated?
For example, you don't know how to, for example, some people go to school and pick a major that's not going to pay off their student loans quick. Or you don't even know what a Roth IRA is. You don't know how to invest. So you go to school, you don't know what you want to do, and I think for a lot of people, they end up taking like, they might go get, for example, they go and major in education, but they don't know that the loans that they're getting is gonna trap them.
Yeah.
And so that's what I meant.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a very real thing that a lot of people fall into, and it's kind of like that. Oh crap, after you graduate and you're like $50,000 in debt, and you have a history degree or some other degree, which I still think those are really valuable, and I think liberal art degrees are valuable, and I understand that like tech it's really, obviously it has a huge influence in everything that we do today, but I still think there's value in those types of degrees, and I think you still, like, you can get jobs within them. I mean, philosophy majors in undergrad have the highest LSAT scores for law schools. So I think it really, really depends. But yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on the drive of the person, and it's also okay to not know what you're doing and to not have a path. I mean, I felt that way for years. Sometimes I still do, and it's like, I don't really think anybody does have it like figured out.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's
true.
a complete farce.
Yeah,
it's
not for
it's like, and I think, you know, people who have like really successful jobs, depending on what your definition of success is, it's kind of like, okay, you might have that, but maybe you don't have other aspects of your internal life, quote unquote, figured out.
Like your family might not be in touch with you.
Exactly.
Other things. Yeah.
Like nothing is as perfect as it ever seems.
That's true.
It's okay for people to feel lost and to feel confused, because there are so many options and the world is changing a lot, and it's okay just like take a deep breath and to be like, okay, one day at a time.
I guess the reason I asked that is because I have a friend, and his recommendation was like, if you don't know exactly what you want to do in college, just like take a year off, travel, and maybe then you'll get some perspective and figure things out. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. I think, so I have dual citizenship with Ireland, and like all of my family in Ireland, when you are in high school, they take what's called a gap year. And that's essentially a year where they can go travel and they can work abroad. Like many of my cousins came and they worked in the United States. Or they can kind of discern what career path they want to go into. And it's so valuable, and I wish the United States pushed that more and enforced it more, because I think it's not necessarily taboo, but it's significantly less common in the United States after high school to be like, oh, I'm going to go travel for a year.
Yeah, it's more like push it. You go straight to college.
Exactly.
You figure out what college you're going to go to while you're in high school.
Yeah, it's like, it's like that, I don't know if it's necessarily capitalism, but just that American mindset where it's like, you need to be entering into university and then entering into the workforce, like boom, boom,
entering
boom.
the rat race.
Right, exactly. And it's like, for what? Like, what is this hurry about? And I definitely agree with, you know, your friend that told you that. I think there's so much value in doing some self-discernment and thinking about it, and yeah, just like taking a year off. It's okay, like a gap year.
Do you think all these like other, I forgot what you call them, but like put like other majors, like education majors, social work, what else? Do you
liberal
think
arts.
like liberal arts, right? Do you think they can ever become remote? Like somebody had a passion for liberal arts. Do you think they could ever, you know, become a digital nomad within a liberal art domain?
Yeah, of course. I think it depends. Like even, okay, you said social work. Like some people might do telehealth. They might just be like a remote therapist for people, which was really common during COVID.
I've actually met one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it depends on what they want to do, but there's a lot of liberal art careers that you can do. So yeah, and I think it just depends on the companies that would be hiring them.
When you becoming an English teacher, I guess it was easy for you because you had a lot of passion about it. And you kind of like set your it seems like you set your goals. I was gonna get the TEFL, I'm gonna go here and here and apply. Was there any challenges like to get a job, or was it relatively easy?
It was hard, but for like, I think a unique reason. It was because China, at the time that I finished my TEFL certification, I don't want to like say too much about it because I don't want to like say it wrong, but there was essentially issues with China and like all the TEFL teachers there, and so a bunch of teachers were out of jobs. Teachers that had worked for China, and China traditionally is like the biggest employer for TEFL teachers. And so I remember applying to so many companies, and they were like, we're flooded with applicants right now, like we cannot accept yours. And I probably applied to maybe like 75 different English companies, so many, and I got my company honestly through luck because I had a really good friend that had just started working with them, and she recommended me to the company, and I feel so fortunate for that because I love my company. I think it's one of the best English speaking English teaching companies that exist. But it was hard. It took me maybe about 2 months to get a job after having it. So it was like 2 months unemployed in Costa Rica, which is insanely expensive. It was not easy.
Interesting. And before we even get into that part, because I think that's part of like my digital nomad questions. Like what happens when your job is on pause?
When you're screwed.
Yeah. But like, how do you feel your job aids the world? Like, do you feel more fulfilled teaching English outside of the United States than you do when you're there?
Well, no. I think like people still need education in the United States. I mean, maybe you're like an immigrant family and you don't speak English and you're really trying to get a job in the United States, then yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I think no matter where in the world, it's like being able to have someone teaching you and being able to teach other people is valuable. So I don't think the place matters, but I think that, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I can't remember your first question. I remembered the second part, but not the first.
Oh, right. Well, I guess I was trying to allude to like the fact that I think that, you know, there's a lot of problems in our world.
Oh,
And, you know,
yes.
and yeah, I think you get it. Because like meeting the economical threshold might be hard, but I feel like if there were more English teachers that could also like consider working remote and going through your route or a different route through university, that could help.
I think so. And honestly, I mean, yeah, I remember your question, like if you feel like you are like actually helping or like contributing or making a difference. And sometimes maybe it doesn't feel like it when I'm, you know, but I think about it and I have students who send you emails and it's like, you know, maybe they're studying for the IELTS or the TEFL because they're really trying to get into university in the United States. And it's like, okay, well, I have this TEFL degree and you're helping them. And it's like, wow, you know, like they got into university because I helped them, or people who get job promotions because their English is significantly better. It's like, you know, it does make you feel good because you feel like you are having a practical kind of contribution to these people. Like they're the students, of course, they're putting in like the work to the learning, but you're the one teaching the material. So it does feel good to know that their success is in part
of your education.
In part, yeah. I mean, not all. Like, of course, it's the amount of work you put in is what you're going to get out, but to have contributed to it is very fulfilling
and powerful, I think.
Yeah, of course. So it's a very fulfilling career.
Like you can imagine, like if one of the people you teach ends up like that class or learning that language like changes their lives, and they can come back and like thank you enormously. Like I can imagine that.
Which they have, and it's a really nice feeling. It's those days where it's like, okay, you know, like this is very impactful for them, and so of course then it impacts how I feel about my job. Like I feel really happy for it. So yeah.
So now that we've talked a little bit about why and how you became an international digital nomad teaching English everywhere in the world, can we speak a little bit about like your digital nomadcy and like why? When did you even start traveling? Like when was the first time?
When I went, well, like traveling as a nomad or just traveling in general?
Let's say traveling in general and then like traveling solo.
Okay. Traveling in general as a child, because as I mentioned earlier, like all my family lives in Ireland pretty much, and so I would go there a lot growing up to visit my family.
Right.
But that was like pretty exclusive, of course, to Europe. But then first time traveling solo was to Costa Rica, and then I like was based there for about a little over a year, but I left and I did all of Central America excluding Belize and traveled through all of that with a friend. And then I went back to the United States this past summer thinking, okay, it's like time to like stay here and I was there for a month and I was just like, no. So I went back to Costa Rica for a month and I was like, where do I want to go that would be like really fun and I've heard good things about, and everyone is just like Medellin, Colombia. And I knew there was a lot of nomads here and I wanted to connect, and so I bought the ticket and here I am.
Interesting. So when you were younger, traveling back and forth from Ireland to the States, did that widen your perspective of the world as a child, or how did you view the world? How did you view the world differently? How did your perspective change the first time you got on that plane as a child? Like, do you remember?
Honestly, I was so young, I don't remember. I was a baby.
Oh my god. So you don't remember how you felt until you started traveling solo?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's kind of like, I mean, it's all my family. It's not like I was solo traveling or like doing touristy stuff in Ireland. Like I was on a farm with my family and my cousins, and so it feels the same as it would in the United States. It's just, you know, you're spending quality time with people you love. So that's a familiar feeling. Like
that's
for
true,
me,
that's true.
which is fortunate, but yeah. So I think it was.
Then what made you just like go to Costa Rica after? Is it because you knew you wanted to get a TEFL and so you just like booked it?
Yeah.
So what triggered?
I think I don't know. I have always, probably since I became aware of it in high school, had like a deep-rooted fear of just immediately kind of graduating and starting working and then working your whole life. And then, you know, by the time you're 60 years old, you kind of wake up from this like fever dream almost and you're like, wow, I made it. I can retire. Now I can live my life. And it instilled like a deep fear in me where, you know, for that 1 year after I graduated, and I was doing the same thing every single day, I couldn't do it. It wasn't for me. And I felt really boxed in because I just think so many people accept like what they're told and how they should be doing things and how they should be living their life, and it's like, well, what if I challenge that? Like, and I've been told I'm very stubborn and defensive.
When's your birthday?
October 18th. It's in 9 days.
Oh, you're not a tourist. but yeah, it seems like a lot of people that I've met that travel or like that took that first step kind of had that epiphany, like, do I want to be like this guy 40 years from now? I don't think so.
I want to challenge it, and I want to learn, like, you know, I don't know what happens after we die. Like, no one really knows. And so I want to kind of take in as much as I can and learn as much as I can and meet people while I'm able to. And, you know, but I also think it's okay if you don't want to.
Okay.
That's a huge thing I think people put where it's like, why don't you want to travel? And it's like, some people don't want to, and that's okay.
It's not for, that's right. It's not for everyone.
Yeah,
but
it's fine.
Okay, but being like from like your personal perspective, how would you say that? How would you compare not traveling versus traveling? Which one would you put on the pedestal?
Well, obviously, from my perspective, traveling.
Okay.
But I think everyone has different circumstances and reasoning, and I think it's important to note too that traveling is a privilege, and it's not a privilege everybody can do. I think it's incredibly blindsided the type of people who say, "Well, just travel, like work hard and you can do it." And it's like everyone has different life experiences and circumstances that might, you know, prevent them from being able to just book a trip to Costa Rica.
True.
And so I want to like acknowledge the privilege that holds.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it's a good idea. It's like a fairy tale idea that everyone can just
and
book
it's not,
it.
You know, yeah, especially like financial status and things like this, or like ability to be able to just do that, and maybe you have connections to your family.
But you know, I've also met people that like they were in situations where they felt complacent and they couldn't really travel, whether it was because they had like a paycheck to paycheck job or whatever it is that was holding them back. And before they started traveling, you know, they kind of had like this epiphany, like, do I really want my life to be repeating every day like this? Yeah. Or do I want to like go out there? And I think just having that, you know, epiphany, that awakening, that helped them like say, I'm just gonna book the flight. I'm broke, but I'm gonna like figure shit out. What I did. and things just freaking worked out, you know. Yeah. I think part of what's holding people back is fear, but I don't know. I think that fear is part of what you need to grow. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, traveling might not be for everyone, but I do feel like everyone should have a little bit of travel experience. I agree. I think like it is one of the most like eye-opening experiences to learn and to reduce ignorance and to educate yourself and become, you know, more understanding of the world and the people in it. Because if it's just like, you know, for example, Colombia, when I told people in my small hometown like that I'm coming to Colombia, a lot of the remarks are like very stereotypical and negative about Colombia, and it's like when you're here, it's the complete opposite of that. And it's like, I wish I could just put all of them on a plane and be like, come here so you can see it, because it's just the ignorance from like the media and the history, and it's like just, I had one of my really, really good friends, and he just went to Pakistan and India for solo travel, and he has been like blogging and showing his experiences in Pakistan, and it's unbelievable. He said it's the most like friendly people he's ever met, but you know, you tell someone in the United States, oh, I'm going on vacation to Pakistan, they're like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing? Yeah. If you have no connection or ties or family there, it's like you're just going to Pakistan. But it's gorgeous looking from when he posts, so I think that's why travel is important, because it reduces that ignorance. That ignorance that the media portrays in our biases. Exactly. So, but I mean, what are some? I mean, I guess we're kind of glorifying traveling, but for sure. But traveling can also be dangerous, right? If you don't do it for the right purpose. I think that you basically get what you look for when you travel. So what are some like advice you would give one that's traveling long term as a digital nomad, with regards to like challenges they can come upon? For example, when you lost your job, or just like, you know, staying in good environments with themselves. Like, what would you say? I think, and I've talked about this with fellow nomads, is there's definitely like a glamorization of travel, especially on social media. You know, you see the reels on Instagram or TikTok of like, here's me just booking my ticket to France or Italy or wherever, you know, and it's like
the reality of it though is there's serious isolation that happens. I mean, especially when you go to a different culture and you are not around anything familiar. At points and at times it can be really, really lonely, and I think that's something to address, where it's like it's not always going to be perfect, and there's times where it just sucks. Like you wish you could just go and have something that feels familiar.
Do you think those times are the times that make you stronger?
I think it makes you aware that it's not always going to be like fun times going out with people and getting the best food and seeing beautiful things. Like sometimes it's mundane, everyday life that people just experience. And it can feel isolating when maybe you don't understand the language and it takes you a long time to make friends and build that community.
Yep.
And if you are alone and isolated in a foreign place where you don't speak the language, like yeah, of course that's gonna bring and pose different challenges, but it's beautiful when you start to build that community and then you can start to like feel connected. But I think it's just recognizing that that is a very real possibility, that it might happen to people. But there's pros and cons to everything.
Is that the realest possibility you can think of? And how do you cope with that when that happens to you?
I think it's hard. I personally love Bumble BFF. I think it's amazing because it's a great way to connect with friends, especially locals. Like for me, it's really important when I go somewhere not just to hang out with fellow expats. Like I want to meet locals. And so Bumble BFF I use to connect to locals, and it's great. Like I have a coffee date tomorrow with a girl from Colombia. I'm really excited. But I think also just allowing yourself to feel those emotions of like loneliness and sadness and things, and be like, it's okay to feel this. Like I think there's so much guilt that can happen, or pressure, where it's like, oh, but I'm traveling, like I can't feel sad, or I can't feel these types of emotions because there's people who wish they could be doing what I'm doing. And it's like, you know, it's important to be grateful for where you're at, but it's also okay to allow yourself to feel all of the emotions. That is my advice.
That's true. What is your biggest take on like how is traveling change your perspective, and what do you think is like the importance or purpose of perspective in our world?
Like perspective on what, just of life in general?
How has it shaped you with the way you look at you view the world?
I think it's very curious to me when people say like, and I hate it, but when people say you're so brave for what you're doing, I really don't like that.
Okay.
And I think it's because, to me, it's not as scary as it looks. Like when you're just doing it and you're traveling, I don't know, like I think it can seem very, very intimidating, which I completely understand, but I don't necessarily think it's like a bravery thing. At least I don't feel very brave for doing it, and maybe that's why I don't like when people say it, because it makes me uncomfortable because I don't feel it. But I think it's kind of like, it can seem so intimidating and like you need to plan so much, but the reality of it is kind of what you said earlier with people, like stuff works out a lot of the time. And I think my perspective has changed a lot because, especially being in like Central and South America, and like, you know, I took a bus from Guatemala all the way to Nicaragua, and it was like 28 hours. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a local, my friend and I were the only like travelers on the whole bus. It's like we were able to see, you know, El Salvador, Honduras, and go to these places where growing up where I'm from, like I never heard extremely positive things about those places, and it changes my perspective on the people and the culture, and it's beautiful and gorgeous, and you're able to make your own opinion, and I think that's my perspective.
That's so true. Okay.
Like make your own opinion. Don't, because what sells always and what's interesting to talk about is bad things. Like they're not going to post something in the news about, look at this pretty beach in El Salvador. No, it's like about violence. And so I think my perspective changed in the terms of, I now realize how valuable and important and literally like crucial it is to make your own opinion about places. Like even if my best friend goes somewhere, I want to go there too to make my own opinion.
That's true.
Yeah.
Just like you might see the photos of like Egypt, but I want to go to Egypt to see from my own eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
I feel you. All right. So now that we've spoken a bit about why and how you became an English teacher, international English teacher, and your perspective on being a digital nomad, is there any last word or advice you would like to leave anyone watching in the audience with that they can take? Actually, before we go to that, what is your life philosophy? What do you live by?
Ooh, you know, I think the only thing that is certain in life is death. Like that is the only thing that we know, is that we are all going to have the exact same fate. And
we got bills too, bills.
Yeah, we do. And I think though, like it's really easy to focus and prioritize things in life, like money or like these types of things. And I know it's not maybe the best example, but I went to Pablo Escobar's cemetery, like his gravesite.
Okay.
But at one point, regardless of who he was the wealthiest man in the world. At one point, or one of them. And you go there and you see it, and it's
nothing.
There's just hundreds of other people around him. It's the exact same as anyone else who's been like, really, really prolific and then died. It's like everyone has the same fate. And so I think for me, and that solidifies my life philosophy where I really try to prioritize and focus experiences over just having money. Like, of course, I want to be financially stable and secure, obviously. But I think in terms of like, for me personally, I think there's nothing wrong with people who want to prioritize like money and those types of things. But for me, it's like we're all going to have the same things. So I just want to experience life as much as I can.
A little different than those that don't want to experience it that way because of money.
Yeah.
Anyways, is there any last keyword of advice you would like to leave the audience with here today?
Man, I don't know. Honestly, I don't think I'm the best person for like giving advice, if I'm honest, because I think everybody is in such different circumstances that when you make blanket and broad statements, it can be confusing and it can be different.
Well, you guys are listening with a grain of salt, so whatever she says, don't take it too personal.
Yeah, I think challenge what you've been told growing up, challenge what you are surrounded by, and challenge your own personal ideals and beliefs. And I think that is when you'll see the most growth, is when you're open to the idea that maybe what you think is wrong. And I think the best way to challenge those is to go and see it yourself and then formulate your own opinion.
Wow, those are very deep advice, and I would advise you guys to do the same.
Yeah.
Take it with 2 grains of salt.
That's right.
And thank you so much, Anna, for being on this episode today. And it's been a blessing to have you here. And I hope we have a second episode sometime in the future.
Yeah.
But thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. This one?
All right. Nice. Solid. Oh, it's still.
30 minutes.